What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. Beryl currently right now is about to approach Jamaica as a very bad Category 4 hurricane. According to the National Hurricane Center, it was a Category 5 hurricane for 15 hours since we ended the stream last night until just recently from the latest advisory, according to the National Hurricane Center. So let's go ahead and dive right into all of this, as well as the potential threats that we are seeing both with Jamaica, as well as the Cayman Islands now, and now the Yucatan and Texas are easily in play at this current point, especially Texas, as we continue to look into this further and further, and as more forecast models continue to pinpoint what's going on. So here's the situation. Maximum sustained winds have weakened down slightly to 155 miles per hour. It was at 165 miles per hour at a peak. I personally do think it was stronger based on some reconnaissance earlier down the road. I do think they're going to reanalyze it in the post-season and allow for potentially a potential new wind speed for it to be upgraded too. But in the meantime, that's besides the point. That's not going to happen for another 9 months, but we'll have to keep an eye on it. Hurricane warning is in effect for Jamaica, Grand Cayman, Little Cayman, and Cayman Bark. A hurricane watch in effect for actually... Matter of fact, we can go ahead and show you the graphics. There's now hurricane watches in effect for the southern coast of Haiti, while tropical storm warnings are in effect over there, as well as in the Dominican Republic. So we're going to have to pay attention to that right then and right there. I do expect hurricane watches to be issued in the next 12 hours or so for parts of the Yucatan Peninsula, and then we'll have to see what happens from there as the system starts to reorganize and potentially re-intensify as we get down the road. So here's what we have going on at this current point in time, according to the public advisory at this current point. Reports from Air Force hurricane hunters indicate that maximum sustained winds are 155 miles per hour, Category 4, high-end Category 4 on the Saffir-Simpson scale. Weakening is forecast later today, but Beryl is still expected to be near major hurricane intensity as it moves through the Central Caribbean and passes near Jamaica on Wednesday and the Cayman Islands on Thursday. If we go ahead and show you back on the cone that we have pulled up right here, this thing is either going to make landfall or make a very close pass to Jamaica right here. If we go ahead and show you the forecast track, it actually has it making landfall in the southern part of Jamaica as a potentially Category 4 hurricane. And we can go ahead and show you the discussion that we have in the next 24 hours as it approaches Jamaica. It's going to be at 140 miles per hour. It's probably going to be weakening as it gets closer to there, but still high-end Category 3, low-end Category 4, passing or landfall is possible as we approach Jamaica right here. And if we can go ahead and show you the discussion, we've kind of showed you the discussion right there. This will be updated at 5 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time. So if you are in Jamaica and in the Cayman Islands, you need to continue preparing. You have less than 24 hours before the system approaches Jamaica at this current point in time. You have a little bit longer. You have about 36 to 42 hours as it approaches the Cayman Islands. You still need to be preparing for this at this current point. It looks like it's going to be a very bad system as it approaches Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. It's going to get weakened down to Category 2 strength as it approaches the Cayman Islands, then to low-end Cat 2, high-end Cat 1 as it approaches the Yucatan, weakens to tropical storm strength, and then we'll have to see what happens from there as it approaches Texas, as I've seen some computer models strengthening this back up to a Category 2 hurricane. So we're going to have to keep a very close eye on this. But before we get further into the track and intensity models, I want to show you a few things that we're looking at this current point in time. Let's go ahead and show you the evolution of this. This was right here from yesterday. This was about 4 p.m. yesterday based off of this based off the satellite estimates. This was an annular hurricane for almost all of yesterday, as this thing was either at high-end Cat 4, low-end Cat 5 until we got into the evening. Then it intensified to a Category 5 hurricane around 10 p.m. This was about right here when it became Cat 5. Got to 165 miles per hour at 1 a.m., and it held that intensity for about 9 hours, although I do believe it was actually stronger than 165. I personally think it was 175 at one point, but we're not going to know until after the season and NHC looks into this further. So, but at this point, the peak was at 165 operationally by the National Hurricane Center. As you can see, the eye really contracted and all that stuff. And just look at how impressive the structure was earlier right here compared to where it is now. This is where the structure was. Very impressive on satellite. One of the most beautiful Category 5 hurricanes I have seen since Dorian in 2019. That's just been an absolutely unbelievable structure. And yeah, no wonder this thing is so strong. It's just going over a lot of warm water. It's going over a lot of ocean heat content right now. We can go ahead and show you that. It's still going to be over a lot of warm water and a lot of OHC. Matter of fact, part of the reason this thing isn't weaker at this current point, because there is wind shear starting to tear apart at the structure, is because it's taking in so much water and there's so much OHC that it's kind of at least a holding off the weakening that's going on according to this. Like, this system is fighting back hard, and it's fighting back at a very intense rate at this point. We can go ahead and show you the last few frames over here. Let's go ahead and go back to 30 frames just to show you what we were looking at. That was in the last 5 hours. You'll start to notice a big burst of convection. Unfortunately, the satellite does cut out on tropical tidbits, but there was a big burst of convection earlier as this thing was approaching the wind shear. So definitely something to keep a very close eye on. This thing is fighting off that wind shear, although the wind shear is going to continue to weaken it as time continues to go on. But in the meantime, yeah, very crazy situations unfolding. It's still going to be over 29 to 30 degrees Celsius waters, or 84 to 86 degree Fahrenheit waters. For those of you tuning in from the United States, as this now does pose a potential threat to the area, especially in around the Corpus Christi region in Texas, according to the track and intensity models. OHC, where this thing is at, it's going to be in the best OHC conditions that we have to offer right here. We're looking at up to 150 OHC, where previously we were not even cracking 125 across a lot of these regions. And another thing you should notice is, I can go ahead and pull it up for you guys right here. The OHC has not cooled off at all. Even as this hurricane becomes a Cat 5, even as it's taking in a lot of warm water, the water's not cooled off and the OHC is not decreased. Part of the reason for that is because this system is moving at over 20 miles per hour. It's actually, it's moving at 22 miles per hour. It's charging through the Caribbean right now. It's just moving at that fast of a rate. It's moving so fast that it's doing absolutely nothing except for maybe a few meters below the surface of taking in all the water. There's absolutely zero upwelling going on, and that, in my opinion, is going to set the tone for what we're going to see in August, September, and October. We're going to see a lot more named systems than the three we have seen in June, which was Alberto, Chris, and Beryl, that is currently still charging through the Caribbean Sea. And matter of fact, that this did pose a lot of records. This is the earliest Category 4 on record, the first Category 4 in June. This is the earliest Category 5 on record, beating Hurricane Emily in 2005 by a long shot. And there's also a bunch of other records that we can talk about, but I'm not going to get into for the sake of time and simplicity at this current point. Let's go ahead and show you the wind shear that we have pulled up for you right here. Wind shear, it's going to be moving through about 30 knots of wind shear as it approaches Jamaica, which is why this thing is not still strengthening, which is why this thing is starting to weaken a little bit, although it's still a very powerful hurricane. And at least the angle of the wind shear right now is helping minimize the damage to the hurricane, because it's still at an angle where the outflow is very much enhanced, but at this point the outflow cannot outbeat the shear, and it's not going to happen. It's getting too close to continue strengthening at this current point, although there is a decrease of wind shear as it approaches the Yucatan Peninsula, and we're going to have to monitor that for potential just holding of intensity as it approaches there. So let's go ahead and show you the track models and then the intensity. Here's the track models that we have pulled up for you. As you can see, this thing is very tightly packed as it approaches Jamaica right here. You can see that there are several models now potentially making landfall in Jamaica at this current point. Either way, the southern half of Jamaica is likely going to get the eyewall at this current point in time, and this thing may undergo an eyewall replacement cycle tonight, which will end up expanding the wind field greatly, and that could make things worse for the island, but we're going to have to pay attention to that, and it'll depend on what kind of eyewall replacement cycle it goes through. Cayman Islands are definitely going to get hit by hurricane force winds. That's why they're under a hurricane warning. Haiti, definitely there's a possibility for that. Then the Yucatan, where it's going to be moving through, it's going to be moving just south of Cancun right there, definitely in a little bit more of a populated area than I was hoping for. It's just south of where it's going to be making landfall is a very rural area in Mexico, near the Belize border. And overall, I wouldn't have been as worried if it was moving that far south. But because the models have shifted this far north, and because the hurricane has shifted so far to the north than what we were anticipating previously, at this point, it's going to be moving through the central Yucatan Peninsula, definitely going to weaken due to land interaction for sure, but then it's going to move over the Gulf of Mexico, and then it's going to start making potential impacts towards Texas right here. Pretty much anywhere from Brownsville to Corpus Christi at this current point is where the landfall portion for the majority of these models are forecasting, so we're going to have to pay attention to that. Intensity models are pretty interesting. It's going to continue to weaken thanks to land interaction and wind shear and all that stuff, but the models do forecast for a bit of a bounce back after it leaves the Yucatan Peninsula and as it starts to approach Texas due to a decrease of wind shear and extremely warm water, even warmer water than what we were seeing, although the ocean heat content in that region isn't nearly as good as what we were seeing in the Caribbean, so we're going to have to pay attention to that as we get more data and more information for you guys. Matter of fact, we're going to go ahead and show you the shear forecast and the moisture forecast to kind of show you what's going on, because matter of fact, one thing I haven't even showed you guys is the dry air. As we go ahead and show you the dry air right here, this is going to be pretty interesting, because what I'm noticing with the core is, yes, there is dry air to the west of it, and it's moving through it right now, but the wind shear is not bringing dry air into the core. The core is so tightly packed, and it's so fighting back so well against the wind shear that it's not allowing for really any dry air to get into the system, which could potentially choke this off and trigger an eyeball replacement cycle. And it's actually beating out the Sahara air layer that's moving through. It's moving so fast. It's actually moving faster than the Sahara air layer that's moving through the Windward Islands at this current point, and it's just going to be charging through and heading towards the Lesser Antilles. So we're going to have to pay very close attention to that. We're going to go ahead and show you the shear forecast and the moisture forecast now. I just want to get that out of the way before we go ahead and dive right into this. Here's what we have with what we're looking at with the 200 to 850 millibar wind shear. We're going to use the 0Z today right here just because it goes the furthest out, considering Texas is now at risk for this. There is going to be an increase of wind shear as it moves through, and it's going to be increasing in the Yucatan Peninsula. We're going to have to monitor that, but part of that may be just due to how strong this system is, and just the model just detecting that, but we're going to have to pay attention to that as this thing approaches and makes landfall. And then the shear in the Gulf of Mexico is going to be kind of interesting, because the wind shear does lay off in a lot of the regions, and the wind shear that does persist is either A, part of the system, or B, going to be at an angle where the outflow could absolutely be helped by this. So we're going to have to pay close attention to that as we get more information. Moisture is going to be interesting as well. Let's go ahead and show you the moisture component to all this. The moisture right here is in a very moist pocket right there. It doesn't look like it's going to be intruding at all or anything like that, which is not what we want to see at this current point. The Sahara air layer is not going to do anything since it's moving too fast for it to meet that. And the dry air that is ahead of it, there's not as much as I would hope there would be. And their only hope of this thing weakening faster than it is if the shear just tears through the structure of it and allows dry air to get into the core of the circulation, where it would have to fight it off through an eyewall replacement cycle. But in the meantime, that's stuff we're going to have to pay very close attention to. We're going to have to keep a very close eye on all of this going into it. At this current point in time, we had hurricane hunters going out earlier. We have another mission going out right now. We had hurricane hunters earlier going out, and that's why we're seeing the weakening at this current point in time. So we're going to have to pay attention to that at this current point. The hurricane hunters have been doing an excellent job of tracking Beryl and just keeping tabs on everything that's going on. And now that we're seeing that weakening thanks to the hurricane hunters, we finally do have some good news in those regards. And yeah, it's just been an absolutely incredible job from everyone aboard. They've been working overtime, getting all the information out. I've been working overtime at the Pat's Path Predictor channel, getting as much information out to you guys as we can. Unfortunately, the job is not done yet, as we still have a very big threat for potentially tens of millions of people across the Caribbean and Texas at this current point in time. So we're going to have to keep a very, very close eye on it. Last thing we're going to go ahead and do is show you all the computer models. We're going to start with the HMON, then the HWRF, and the HAVS A models. As this thing continues to move closer towards Jamaica, at this current point in time. So here's what we have with the HMON. This is the 12Z that we have for you right here. The HMON has this thing really just maintaining its intensity, slowly weakening as it approaches Jamaica and all that right here. As a Category 4 hurricane, the HMON wants this thing to move very close to Jamaica, but just outside of it. The HMON wants the core to shrink, which I think is pretty interesting, and I will be honest, I don't think that's going to happen with the wind field, especially if an eyewall replacement cycle takes place tonight, which the structure from what I've looked at and from what I've talked about with my mods on Storms United is that it's very susceptible to one tonight, and what ERCs do, as we've been talking about, expand the wind field, and overall, that's what's going on. So I find it kind of interesting that the HMON wants the core of it to shrink as it approaches Jamaica, which I don't know what's going on with that. We'll have to pay attention to it. But regardless, Jamaica could definitely see the eye wall, especially the southern half of Jamaica could see the eye wall. And that's not even the worst threat at this current point. Yeah, the surge is horrible. The wind is absolutely bad. But there's also a lot of flash flooding that's going to be moving through much of Jamaica. And then this thing's going to be moving south of the Cayman Islands, potentially bringing hurricane force winds. And that's going to be making landfall in the Yucatan. The core is going to absolutely get disrupted by this. But then it's going to slowly reorganize and potentially re-intensify before making landfall in northeast Mexico or South Texas over there. So overall, a very big and very serious situation that we are dealing with throughout all of this. Let's go ahead and show you the H-Wharf right here. The H-Wharf has been dead on with Hurricane Beryl so far, and I'm pretty confident the H-Wharf has something going on. The H-Wharf is pretty interesting. The H-Wharf, kind of with what the NHC's track wants, is a landfall in the southern Jamaica right there. The wind is going to absolutely be the biggest threat in this scenario right there, with Category 4 hurricane force winds making landfall in Jamaica, causing a lot of damage and a lot of problems for the island, especially in the agriculture industry. Because I remember when I was researching Hurricane Dean, it didn't even make landfall. It was a Cat 3 or 4 moving south of Jamaica. It just and because the eye wall was over the southern half of Jamaica, it just absolutely destroyed so much agriculture, and there's going to be most likely a lot of agriculture losses with this as well as a lot of damage with this if it does make landfall. The H-Wharf also wants the Cayman Islands to get the eyewall of the system before moving towards the Yucatan Peninsula, first making landfall on the island just off the coast of that as a Category 3 hurricane before moving through the Yucatan Peninsula. Definitely disrupts the core, although it does emerge as a Category 1 hurricane, mainly due to land interaction not being as severe as in the HMON. And then the H-Wharf starts to slowly organize and re-intensify up to potentially Category 3 strength as it makes its final approach towards Texas over here. So yeah, we're looking at a potentially big threat for a lot of, or tens of millions of people still, even though the Lesser Antilles have seen a huge bulk of it at this current point. Let's go ahead and show you the HAVS A model right here. The HAVS A wants this thing to make a very close pass to Jamaica. The eye wall will definitely be on the southern half of Jamaica. According to the HAVS A model, Cayman Islands get hurricane force winds, although the HAVS A wants the shear to absolutely tear this thing apart, which I'm going to be honest is I don't think it's going to happen. I personally think it's going to be a Category 2 or Category 3 as it approaches the Yucatan Peninsula near Cancun at this current point, but I will say the HAVS A does not have this thing weakening as much due to the land interaction not being as severe, and then it starts to reorganize and re-intensify as it makes landfall near the U.S.-Mexico border at this current point in time. Last model we're showing you is the HAVS B right here. We can go ahead and show you that. The HAVS B is pretty interesting at this current point in time. It has it making landfall in Jamaica and causing a bit of a disruption in the core of the system right there as it moves offshore. Regardless, the HAVS B wants this thing to move the most through Jamaica, and just the eye wall especially is going to be impacting almost the entire country, and that's a worst case scenario at this current point in time, and the NHC has been shifting the track back to the north. I pray that we start seeing some signs that the track moves further south, because Jamaica absolutely does not need a Category 4 or a Category 3 for that fact making landfall in the island right there. They have a lot of stuff that's going on with right there, and they do not need this going on. And then this thing moves through the Cayman Islands. Hurricane force winds absolutely go through there at this current point, and then this thing makes landfall in the Yucatan Peninsula as a Category 2 system. Land interaction definitely tears it apart, but then it starts to reorganize and re-intensify as it approaches land in northeast Mexico or South Texas right there as a Category 2 system. So overall, a very serious situation that we are dealing with at this current point in time, and this is definitely something I will keep updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps us out, helps us make more videos like these. The goal of this channel is to get more people engaged with weather. Remember, if you want to come help us out, or you want to see the forecasts behind the scenes and the talking behind the scenes of what's going on, be sure to join the Storms United Discord server. Link to that is right over there. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.